Hi there. My name is Laura Zelenak. I'm a health educator with Marshfield Clinic Health System. I work with in the Center for Community Health Advancement. And today I'm chatting with Dr. Eric Hartwig, who is the creator of the b.e.s.t universal screening tool. And b.e.s.t stands for Behavioral, Emotional, Social Traits. This tool helps teachers improve the behavioral health in their classrooms. Since 2013, Security Health Plan, which is part of the Marshfield Clinic Health System, has provided grants to schools so they can use b.e.s.t. And Dr. Hartwig is going to tell us all about that today. Hi, Dr. Hartwig.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, and thanks for taking the time to meet with me today.
Very happy to.
So you have a really long career in both education and psychology. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it led you to creating b.e.s.t?
Sure. I actually started as a school psychologist in 1974 with my primary responsibility was identifying children with behavioral and learning problems. And really the course of b.e.s.t started about maybe within 6 months of my work, because everything that we seemed to focus on was labels and finding categories for children and naming things instead of really talking about, well, what interventions are going to be most helpful and likely to help kids and families. So I just started doing a little research, went back to a study from 1921 that talked about how children express their emotions in two distinct ways: internalizers, sadness and withdrawal, difficulty interacting with others, and then also what they call externalizers, behaviors that are disruptive to others, and could be somebody that's oppositional, it could be somebody who's angry or frustrated. But what was interesting about it is that the idea is that when you understood the behavior by what it looked like, you needed to get behind it. You need to understand the purpose, what it was. So, for example, when a child is sad, we can't undo the cause of that. But what we can do is we can find out what we can do to teach them skills to be able to manage the things they're going to be exposed to. So I did a little study, and I got invited to present at a conference at UW-Oshkosh in 1977, I believe it was, or 76. Mm-hmm. And that was the genesis of b.e.s.t. And since that time, we've created an online version, which is really not diagnostic in any way. It's just about matching interventions to children's needs and helping teachers and families develop ways to improve their practices and their skills with kids who are challenging. And more importantly, I think to give kids the skills they need to be more successful in terms of in behavioral health areas.
Wow, that's really neat that there's kind of two simple buckets to observe. So how do teachers actually use it in the classroom? How do they take those ideas and use it?
Well, that's a great question, because what happens is that what we want to tell the teachers is the data is the first part of the information. So we collect information about children based on a teacher's observation of that child. And then from there, we match interventions that are most likely to be successful, but we also uncover some of the purpose or the definition of why kids do what they do. So for example, when you see a child who appears angry and frustrated, oftentimes that's misinterpreted as a negative reaction to the adults in the world. It might be a child that's afraid, a child that's scared, and they're pushing away. So what we do with the data is to help teachers to understand why kids do what they do and what they might be able to do to react to it in a more positive way, to manage their emotions, to help the child manage theirs. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make it practical and useful in real time. Behavioral health issues are real time. Academics are things that you can work on today or tomorrow or next week, but behavioral health is, if you're sad right this minute, you need help right this minute. And that's what we try to help with classroom teachers.
Yeah, that sounds like that's super important to have that in the classroom. How does that help academics? Why is using b.e.s.t important for academics in a classroom?
Well, there's no question about it, and I'm surely that there's biases from my own research on this, but I think behavioral health is far more important than any other academic issues. If you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't feel engaged in the learning process, it doesn't matter how good a teacher you are. It doesn't matter how interested you might be in the topic. You aren't able to really focus. And I think any adult or anybody knows that. You know, if your mind is someplace else and you have somebody providing instruction to you, even if it's important to you, you just can't kind of engage. So the important part here is that if we can help kids feel regulated and engaged and feel good about themselves, they're more likely to engage in the academic expectations that we want them to be involved in. They can focus more readily, and that's really where we try to make that linkage. Clearly, there's a parallel relationship between academic success and behavioral health success, because the more you engage, the more skills you learn, the better you feel about yourself. One key principle that we try to really focus on when we talk with teachers is behavioral health is about learning. Any and all learning makes you feel good about yourself. So that means when we can engage children and they start to learn something new, they feel better about themselves. And every parent recognizes that when they see their children learn a new skill in their home as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. I mean, I think as adults, when we have an off day, we know we can't be fully engaged in work and our own learning. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So we've been partnering with you for a really long time. I know you've worked with a lot of school districts and a lot of kids. Can you give us an idea of the scale? Like, how many districts have you worked with? Schools, kids?
Well, that's another great question. Well, right now we have 41 different school districts that are actively involved in b.e.s.t in this project that we're working with you, and we have really appreciated the partnership. Marshfield Clinic and the Security Health System has been incredibly supportive, bringing this information to classrooms throughout the state. We have 136 active subscriptions right now in this project alone. Let me just double check there. We have completed 189,000 screenings on 76,000 different children. We've identified trends of children so that we now not only looking at data regarding individual students, we're talking about trends in a school. You know, we've identified interventions that are most likely to be helpful for all children. And that to me is what's important. So we've grown. The first year we did this, we screened 200 children. 200 children. Last year, in the fall, we screened almost 35,000 kids in one cohort.
Wow.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That is amazing. That's a huge number.
It is.
I was looking up the years today. This is the 8th school year that Security Health Plan and Marshfield Clinic have been working with you. So it's a long time.
It really is. And every year we've grown our group, and we've maintained the integrity of people that have been part of the original grant. We still have schools that started with us way back 8 years ago. And we continue to expand, and we move from smaller rural school districts to very large school districts. So it's been a really great partnership. And more importantly to us, the idea is that we're able to really have an impact on children and classroom teachers. And that's what's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know too, working in health, that healthy beginnings are where it's at. So we're proud to partner with you, and we know that it's important that kids are able to self-regulate and are able to be happy and healthy in order for them to grow into healthy adults also. Yes. So with all those kids and all those years and all those students, surely you have a story, like a great example of how b.e.s.t has helped a teacher and or a student. Can you share a story with us?
Oh yes, and there's so many. It's hard to even pick out what the ones that I could share. But small gains and large gains. But a couple that I think are most significant is the aha experience that you see when you're training somebody about what the child's behavior is about. So, for example, an externalizer. Sometimes children appear very oppositional and negative, and they don't want to do it. And so what happens is adults, unfortunately, the more that a child opposes them, the more they try to control the child. And the exact opposite is exactly what's supposed to happen. And I had this little boy I walked into one of my schools, and he was standing on a bookcase in the hall with two adults trying to get him off the bookcase. And they were just doing everything they could to try to get this little guy to come down. And he was completely not interested in it. So I asked both of the adults to go. I didn't even actually know the child, by the way, other than the fact we had some data on him, but I didn't know him personally. And then I immediately used what's called a redirect technique. And I pointed out the window and said, I thought I saw a bear or some animal outside the school. And he immediately said to me, a bear? And I said, I think it is, maybe it's not. And he jumps down off the bookcase and he looks out and he says, well, yeah, I don't see him, but he said, I think it, sometimes animals are like wizards. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, sometimes you can see them and sometimes you can't. And then I asked him, I said, do you think your classroom teacher knows that? He said, I'm not sure. And I said, well, why don't you take me to your class and let's talk about it? So he walks me down the hall to where he was supposed to be. We walk into the classroom. The two adults that I asked to leave the hall was the teacher and the support person. We walk in, we sit down. I asked them if they'd ever heard about wizards, and they hadn't. And so I said, well, he knows all about them. So he starts to tell them about wizards. I get up and I leave. What they were trying to do was force him to do something by using their words. What I did is redirected his emotions and his behavior, de-escalated him, and then he literally engaged in the right behavior on his own. So that's one really concrete example. But
wow.
One other one I just want to suggest to you, and this is really, really important. When we first started doing b.e.s.t in some of our big schools, a number of the pupil services staff, school social workers and psychologists were saying, well, this data can't be right because we've never heard of these kids. And so I thought to myself, well, something must be wrong here. And so I went back and looked at the data, and every child that they hadn't been made aware of was a child who was an internalizer, somebody who struggles with feelings and emotions, kids that didn't disrupt the classroom, but had specific emotional needs that needed to be addressed, just like that little boy that was oppositional. We had an incredible epiphany in that discussion about, oh my goodness, yes, turns out that those kids have as great a needs as the kids that are opposing you, but more often than not, people don't do anything with them because they don't disrupt the environment. So we're now having conversations with teachers about those kids who are really anonymous in our schools, and we're bringing those kids to the surface. So to me, those are the kind of things that are powerful indicators of people's knowledge and understanding children's behavioral health issues and helping them to manage their world.
Yeah, I would have definitely been an internalizer. It's the introvert's curse, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. And what's interesting about that too is that everybody has needs and everybody wants to have their place in the sun, do they not? And you should be
Right.
able to tell somebody how you feel without somebody judging or evaluating what you feel, because you feel the way you feel. Not my job to change the way you feel. My job is to help you manage how you feel in a ways that's helpful to you. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Cool.
those kind of discussions are just, I have it in every school we're in. It's incredible. And I know people know it, but we operationalize it. We make it real for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun and really rewarding. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing to support our kids. It's super important.
Great. Well,
Thanks
thank
for your
you.
time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for
So
having me.
thank you. And I just want to remind everyone that we're going to be putting this video on Facebook. In fact, that's probably where you're watching it. And we're meeting again. Dr. Hartwig will be doing this again and talking about other ways to support kids so that they have a successful school year. We also have a parent tips document. You can find that on Facebook and on our website, communityhealth.marshfieldclinic.org. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again, Dr. Hartwig.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.